Hi, Sheila Keeter here. I'm the teacher for inclusion, and today I would like to talk about the question that keeps coming up. Is Edgar Allan Poe truly the best horror author that is out there? And I would like to give him credit for being the best horror author. But of course, that question and answer lies within the eye of the beholder. So you might like one horror story author over another. So let's go ahead and take a look at why I believe that he is the best author for horror stories. The first short story I would like to look at is The Mask of the Red Death, which applies to today in that it is about a pandemic. And a lot of people are dying, and they're dying at a much faster rate than they are today, and quickly. And this Prince Prospero decides that he's going to invite all of his rich friends into his castle. They're going to lock themselves in, and they're just going to drink, party, and be merry while everyone else dies, and then they're going to come out after. Well, what I believe is brilliant about this book is that there's a lot of different rooms, and they're all different colors, and they're symbolic for something. Each is symbolic for something different. And Edgar Allan Poe uses figurative language, and he also uses a lot of symbols in the story during a time period when many authors were not using figurative language and didn't know how to use figurative language. So at the end, as everyone is drinking and having a good time, this masked figure comes out of the red room. For some reason, no one wants to go in the red room. We can obviously tell that's symbolic for blood and death. This masked figure comes out, the prince tries to attack him, and the prince dies immediately, followed by every single last person at the party dying. And the masked figure is a metaphor for the Red Death. The Pit and the Pendulum gets a lot of credit for being one of the most copied stories I have personally seen. The story starts with a man who is in a torture chamber, and he wakes up that way, and he tries to keep himself busy by jumping around and doing exercises. And pretty soon he falls asleep and wakes up tied down next to a pit and a pendulum. And he's trying to figure out how to get out of this scenario. And we can definitely see the movie series Saw in this particular short story. They've also used corpse rats in shows like Criminal Minds, and even a movie called The Bone Collector. The Cask of Amontillado is very interesting in that Edgar Allan Poe seems to know a lot about psychology during a time period when they were not studying psychology. So it's about a character named Fortunato who's not very fortunate. So he uses a lot of irony. And a character named Lucchesi, who has carefully planned and is carrying out this plan to kill Fortunato, who offended him to some degree, obviously to a great degree. But it isn't obvious to Fortunato because he trusts him, and he walks and follows him all the way down into the catacombs of his home to try to get to a bottle of wine. We see the character who's being killed in the end, who's buried in a wall, which we have seen even in the Disney haunted house, go through stages of grief of his own death. And during the time period when Edgar Allan Poe existed, we didn't have the stages of grief. I mean, these stages of grief existed, but they weren't studied and known. So that leads us to Telltale Heart, which is one of the more popular stories that he has. And Telltale Heart is the story of a middle-aged man who decides he's going to kill the man he's supposed to care for because he has a strange eye, and he's clearly in a state of psychosis. And what's interesting and impressive about Edgar Allan Poe is, again, he knows a lot about psychology, and he seems to know a lot about psychosis and paranoid psychosis. The man buries the old man under the floorboards after he kills him, And then he can hear the beating of the heart, and he admits to killing the old man to the police officers, which again shows him just completely cracking in some state of paranoid psychosis. The Raven is a great one. It has the story of the raven, and the raven is symbolic for like someone who's a spirit that's inside of the raven. And there's a man who loses his wife, and the raven continues to tap on the window, reminding him of Lenore, and he keeps hearing her name. And at first it's comforting, and then it becomes maddening. And again, that takes us back to that knowledge of psychology that other people didn't know or understand at the time. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I hope that you got some ideas of why Edgar Allan Poe is so brilliant. Even if you don't care about his work, you can still appreciate the brilliance and intelligence of his work. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.